So I'm Dr. Reanne, co-founder of Semantrix, a new platform which looks at the entanglements between language perception and culture, the many ways in which language shapes our lives. But today I wanted to talk about Aldous Huxley. So I'm a philosopher of language, but first and foremost, I'm a Huxley scholar. And this Thursday, the 4th of May, we are approaching the 70th anniversary of Huxley's first mescaline trip. Without that, honestly, I think most of our lives would look quite different. The whole history of psychedelics may have unfolded very differently. So Aldous Huxley's imprint on Western psychedelic culture is pretty much immeasurable. But I just wanted to mention one of several misconceptions around Huxley's legacy. And this might sound a little bit persnickety, but honestly, I think what we need is to be nuanced, is to be able to take things in context and read things in context. So as this psychedelic renaissance, resurgence, whatever you want to call it, evolves, I think Huxley's work becomes extremely important again, especially around these questions of medicalization and psychedelic professionalism. Danielle Gifford wrote a very good book about this topic called Acid Revival, where she sort of examines how these performances of professionalism, that they tend to rest on a series of historical distortions. In particular, the narratives that parade Leary as psychedelics or psychedelia's bad example. And in these invocations, Huxley is often summoned as Leary's counterpoint, who, cautioned Leary about the perils of mass psychedelic distribution, and that should have been heeded. So, Gifford gives this really amazing, really nuanced account of Leary and the sort of inaccuracies and about his legacy and what was overblown. But she sort of glosses over Huxley a little bit when it comes to those standards, which is completely understandable. You can't go into that level of detail about everybody. Context. So she pictures Huxley as this ally of the medical professionals, someone who wanted psychedelic experiences to remain the stuff of the elites. And this characterization, it's not incorrect per se. Huxley certainly was invested in the idea of reserving psychedelics for a limited number of influential people. However, I think this is often overstated and decontextualized. It very neatly coheres with this wider discourse which narrates Western psychedelic history as this rupture between elitism and egalitarianism, which is completely understandable. Psychedelics have a really strange, convoluted history. We like to be able to categorize things. But this obscures both the origin and some of the contingencies of Huxley's perspective on this. So Huxley's first mescaline experience was under the guidance of Humphrey Osmond, a British psychiatrist. Now, they'd been in correspondence for a little while before this event took place. And in this correspondence, Osmond was really forthcoming about his view that to study psychedelics on immature or inadequate or sick people is to lose most, if not all, of their great and indeed extraordinary possibilities. I think the context and the chronology here is significant. It shows how this elitist paradigm, it predated Huxley's involvement with either Osmond or mescaline. It didn't come from Huxley, it came from Osmond. I'm not denying Huxley's support for this model, but I think it's really important to emphasize that, this whole idea of prioritizing an exclusive group in psychedelic research, that was the framework through which Huxley was first introduced to these compounds. And what's really, really telling is that after 9 years of psychedelic inquiry, Huxley completed his final novel, Island, in which elite access was not the distribution model. There's a psychoactive toadstool called moksha, which is ceremonialized in this book. Moksha is not simply accessible to everyone, it's a rite of passage, I think it's really clear that Huxley's reservations about psychedelic populism, he didn't want to talk about it in TV interviews or anything like that. This was clearly tethered to his rather pessimistic view of Western culture, not to some general principle of best practice. And this detail, it's often neglected. in Ireland, in this community, their use of psychedelics, it's entirely about inclusivity and social engagement. Have a lovely rest of your day.